The Land Rover groaned, a familiar symphony of worn metal against the unforgiving terrain of the Kalahari. Kaelo, sweat stinging his eyes, gripped the steering wheel, his gaze sweeping the parched expanse. Dust, fine as flour, coated everything. The dashboard, his hands, the very air he breathed. For 10 hours he'd been tracking, driven by a nagging unease and the faint spoor of an injured lion. This was his life, his calling. A solitary vigil over the wild, a fight against the relentless march of human encroachment. His satellite phone, usually silent for hours, buzzed violently, startling him. Thabo, his most trusted local tracker, was on the line, his voice tight with urgency and a tremor Kaelo rarely heard. "Kaelo, it's Kgotso. The big male. Found him near the dry riverbed. He's bad, Kaelo. Really bad. But something's off. Not just a fight." Thabo's words hung in the air, cold and heavy, igniting a fresh wave of dread. Kaelo pushed the old vehicle harder, the engine whining in protest. When he finally found Kgotso, the sight was a punch to the gut. The magnificent lion, usually a picture of regal power, lay sprawled, gaunt and barely breathing, his golden eyes glazed with pain. It was the wounds that stopped Kaelo cold, not the jagged tears of a rival's claws or the clean puncture of a buffalo's horn. These were different. His front paws bore angry, burn-like marks, the skin bubbling and peeling. A corrosive-looking laceration, unnaturally deep and strangely clean edge, marred his flank, oozing a dark viscous fluid. This wasn't nature's doing. He radioed Dr. Imani at the Northern Botswana Wildlife Conservation Center, his voice tight with controlled urgency. "Imani, it's Kaelo. I found Kgotso. His condition is critical, but the injuries, they're highly unusual. Burn-like lesions on his paws, a deep corrosive laceration on his flank, nothing I've seen before from natural causes." He hoped she would understand the unspoken plea in his voice. Dr. Imani's reply was immediate, clipped, and devoid of the usual warmth. "Negative, Kaelo. The board won't approve resources for an elderly male, especially with these unusual reports from the eastern boundary. Let nature take its course." The words were chillingly professional, but her tone carried an undercurrent of unspoken pressure, a warning almost, regarding these reports she alluded to. Kaelo stared at Kgotso, the old lion's eyes meeting his, full of profound dignity and an unbearable suffering. Imani's words echoed the hushed rumors he'd heard for months. Whispers of unexplained animal illnesses, strange fatalities near the new exploratory drilling site on the reserve's eastern boundary, always downplayed, always dismissed by the board as isolated incidents or natural selection. This wasn't natural selection. This wasn't nature. This was an injustice. The crushing weight of protocol battled against a deep, primal moral conviction. Saving Kgotso wouldn't just be breaking protocol. It would mean exposing a disturbing truth, a truth that powerful entities wanted buried. It would almost certainly mean the end of his career, the end of everything he'd built. But looking into Kgotso's suffering eyes, the choice became agonizingly clear. Connections breaking up. "I'll update when I return to base," Kaelo lied, his finger hovering over the radio's power button. With a decisive click, the static died. He had chosen Kgotso. He had chosen the truth, whatever the cost. He moved with grim determination, preparing the tranquilizer. Kgotso barely stirred as the dart found its mark. Up close, the horror of the wounds was magnified, undeniable. The chemical-like burns on his paws, the corrosive laceration on his flank, they bore the unmistakable signature of deliberate human-caused damage. This wasn't an accident. This was an assault. "Hang in there, Kgotso," Kaelo murmured, his voice rough with emotion, as he began the laborious task of loading the massive animal onto the Land Rover's flatbed. "What have they done to you, old man, and why are they trying to bury it?" Back at his isolated research outpost, the only light cutting through the oppressive Kalahari night was the glow of Kaelo's headlamp. With surgical precision, he began the painstaking process of cleaning Kgotso's wounds, a lone figure in the vast darkness. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that by taking Kgotso in, he had just ignited a dangerous secret fight against powerful, unseen forces, forces that had already proven they were willing to silence the innocent to protect their secrets. The night was a suffocating blanket of silence, broken only by the rasping struggle of Kgotso's breath. Kaelo, slumped beside the great cat, felt the tremor of each labored inhalation ripple through the lion's massive frame. He placed a hand on Kgotso's chest, the coarse fur surprisingly soft beneath his palm, and whispered into the darkness, a desperate plea. Don't give up, Kgotso. Not yet. You're too strong for this. Then a flicker. Kgotso's golden eyes, previously dull with pain, slowly opened, finding Kaelo's in the dim glow of the single lantern. There was no aggression, no primal fear of the human touch, but something else. A profound awareness, a conscious recognition that transcended instinct. It was a silent acknowledgement, a shared moment that defied easy explanation. By the first hint of Kalahari dawn, the crisis had passed. Kgotso's breathing steadied, and the fever broke. Kaelo felt an unspoken gratitude emanate from the lion's steady gaze, a silent testament to a bond forged in the crucible of suffering. For a week, Kaelo moved in a blur of solitary care. He meticulously cleaned the necrotic edges of Kgotso's wounds, applied specialized poultices for the corrosive burns, and administered antibiotics. Kgotso, for all his wildness, was unusually calm, accepting Kaelo's ministrations with a responsive quietness that defied all Kaelo's prior experience with injured predators. During brief, carefully timed absences, Kaelo became a ghost, tracking back to the dry riverbed where he'd found Kgotso. His suspicions were confirmed with grim precision. The soil was discolored in patches, the hardy desert vegetation withered and dead in unnatural patterns, and a faint, acrid smell lingered in the air, subtle but unmistakable. It was all concentrated near a small, abandoned corporate drilling site. Precisely the area Dr. Imani had vaguely referenced, linked to the board's unusual reports. At immense personal risk, Kaelo took soil samples, bagging them meticulously. Then he gathered his courage and, with a heavy heart, drew blood samples from Kgotso, the lion tolerating the needle with astonishing placidity. The initial field tests, rudimentary as they were, confirmed his fears, alarming biomarkers of chemical exposure. Further investigation of the abandoned site yielded discarded equipment of fuel cans, empty chemical drums, all bearing the distinctive, aggressive logo of Omnicorp, a massive conglomerate known for its relentless expansion into new territories, often with disregard for local ecosystems. By day 10, Kgotso stood shakily, his massive frame regaining some of its former power. His recovery was remarkable, but Kaelo's suspicion of a deliberate corporate cover-up facilitated by a complicit board solidified with every piece of incriminating evidence. The relationship between man and beast deepened. Kgotso no longer just tolerated Kaelo's presence. He actively welcomed it. His golden eyes followed Kaelo, intelligent and discerning. This profound trust, this undeniable imprinting, was dangerous, potentially blurring the lines between conservationist and confidant, but it was also a testament to Kgotso's extraordinary nature, a creature of immense will and unexpected awareness. On day 14, as Kaelo prepared Kgotso's meal, a rustle in the perimeter fence caught his eye. 3 female lions, Lorado, Ganya, and Chipo, stood at the edge of his outpost, observing them. Their presence here, so close to human habitation, was unprecedented, unnerving. They were Kgotso's daughters, members of his pride. Kgotso, sensing their arrival, paused. Instead of immediately devouring the meat Kaelo had laid out, he slowly, deliberately approached Kaelo. With a gentleness that belied his immense power, he pressed his massive forehead against Kaelo's shoulder, a profound, unmistakable gesture of trust and gratitude that defied all scientific explanation, a language older than words. Looking from Kgotso's steady eyes to the watchful gaze of his pride at the fence line, Kaelo understood. The females weren't here by accident. They were here for a reason, likely driven from their territory by the same unseen human threat that had injured Kgotso. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern, a larger plot, spreading its tendrils of destruction through the Kalahari. Every day, the 3 females returned. Lorado, Kaganya, and Chepo, Kgotso's daughters, would position themselves just beyond the perimeter of Kaelo's outpost, their presence a silent, unwavering vigil. They kept a cautious distance, never approaching too close, yet their golden eyes held a profound intensity as they watched Kaelo tending to their patriarch. Thabo, during a discreet check-in, confirmed their lineage by the unique ear notches Kaelo had meticulously cataloged over years of observation. They were family, and their persistent presence was a silent testimony to Kgotso's enduring role and their own unspoken plight. By the 4th week, Kgotso's transformation was remarkable. His wounds, once festering and grotesque, had healed, leaving behind stark, almost geometric scars from the chemical burns. His lean frame had regained much of its formidable muscle, and the deep, resonant rumble that had once defined him was returning. He was almost fully restored, a testament to his innate will and Kaelo's unwavering dedication. Then came the inevitable. The distant drone of a vehicle growing steadily louder on the parched earth. The monthly supply run. Kaelo's heart clenched, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. He knew that distinct rumble. It was Dr. Imani's Jeep, and his deception, his breach of protocol, was about to be exposed. The Jeep skidded to a halt, kicking up a cloud of red dust. Dr. Imani stepped out, her face a mask of shock, quickly morphing into unconcealed fury as her eyes fell upon Kgotso, resting calmly beside the research station. "Have you lost your mind, Kaelo?" she hissed, her voice low but laced with steel. "This is the lion I explicitly ordered you to leave. You've habituated a wild predator. Do you have any idea the implications of this?" She paused, regaining some composure, her gaze sweeping over Kgotso's healed form. "The board already has concerns about your unorthodox methods, Kaelo, and the sensitive nature of the surrounding land. This is unforgivable." Kaelo didn't flinch. He stood protectively beside Kgotso, his hand resting lightly on the lion's mane. "I couldn't, Imani. His wounds weren't natural, they were burns. Chemical burns. I believe he was poisoned by runoff from their activities." He subtly gestured eastward, his eyes cutting towards the hazy horizon where the Omnicorp drill site lay hidden. The unspoken accusation hung heavy in the air. Dr. Imani's jaw tightened, her disciplinary tirade gathering momentum. But before she could unleash her full wrath, a sudden movement caught their attention. Lorato, the largest of Kgotso's daughters, emerged from the bush, a freshly killed warthog slung awkwardly in her jaws. She approached the fence with an almost deliberate gait, her gaze fixed on Kgotso and Kaelo. Then, with a gentle nudge, she dropped the kill at the fence line, directly for Kgotso, an undeniable offering. "My God," Dr. Imani whispered, her anger temporarily overridden by profound scientific awe. Her rigid posture softened, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Females don't bring food to males like this, not in this way. That's not their social structure, Kaelo. It's unheard of." And the unprecedented behavior shattered her preconceived notions, leaving her momentarily speechless. Kaelo seized the moment. "Nothing about this follows patterns, Imani. Just like those unusual reports you mentioned, I have soil samples from the drill site, biomarkers on Kgotso confirming chemical exposure. I think there's a very deliberate reason the board wanted him left to die, a reason connected to Omnicorp." He let the name hang in the air, a cold, hard truth. Dr. Imani was visibly shaken. The impossible behavior of the lions, coupled with Kaelo's damning evidence, chipped away at her resolve. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders slumping. "I'll face disciplinary action for this, Kaelo, you know that, but all right. A fragile truce." She met his gaze, a glint of steel returning. "The outpost remains operational for now. Kgotso stays, but under strict protocols for an eventual sanctuary transfer, and we will document everything, every single detail." "This could change our understanding of pride relationships, Kaelo," Dr. Imani admitted, her voice still tinged with wonder. But then her expression darkened, and she lowered her voice. "But if word gets out about why we found him or that we're actively exposing Omnicorp, it will jeopardize everything, not just our careers, but this entire facility and everything we've worked for. They're powerful, Kaelo. Be careful." The implicit threat of powerful corporate and governmental forces, shadowy and pervasive, hung in the air between them, a cold promise of danger. The outpost buzzed with a new, nervous energy. A small research team, dispatched from the main center, arrived with specialized equipment, setting up camera traps around Kgotso's enclosure and meticulously analyzing his blood samples. The results were conclusive. The DNA confirmed Kgotso's paternal lineage to Lorato, Kaganya, and Chepo, solidifying Thabo's keen observations and Kaelo's growing conviction the lions were undeniably family. Kaelo seized the opportunity, discreetly sharing his initial findings with Dr. Imani, the discolored soil samples, the clandestine photos of discarded Omnicorp equipment, the alarming biomarkers of chemical exposure in Kgotso's blood. Her initial skepticism about direct corporate involvement born of years navigating bureaucratic red tape and funding concerns, slowly gave way to a chilling alarm as she correlated his data with previously suppressed internal reports she now accessed, reports that had been minimized and filed away under unusual environmental anomalies. 4 months into Kgotso's remarkable recovery, his 3 daughters, now almost daily visitors to the perimeter, vanished. Days stretched into a week. When they finally reappeared, they were agitated, their usual cautious demeanor replaced by restless pacing and low, guttural vocalizations of distress. "Something's deeply wrong in their territory, Kaelo," Thabo stated gravely, his eyes scanning the horizon. Drones were deployed, their quiet hum a stark contrast to the urgency of the situation. The initial footage revealed the immediate cause of the females' agitation. A new, formidable coalition of young males had encroached, driving the pride from their prime hunting grounds to less favorable territories. But then, as the drones climbed higher and scanned wider, they exposed something far more chilling: irrefutable evidence of aggressive recent industrial encroachment by Omnicorp. A newly cleared path cut through pristine bush, temporary drilling structures scarred the landscape, and most damningly, discolored, stagnant chemical ponds shimmered exactly where Kaelo had found Kgotso months earlier. Dr. Imani stared at the drone monitor, her face pale. The full, horrifying truth crashed down on her. "They weren't just driven out by younger males, Kaelo," she whispered, her voice tight with a cold fury. "Their territory was compromised, their hunting disrupted, their water tainted by this." She jabbed a finger at the screen, at the ugly environmental damage left by Omnicorp. The board knew. They minimized those unusual reports because it links directly to Omnicorp's funding, to political pressure, to a cover-up. The female's agitated behavior was no longer just instinct. It was a clear, intelligent plea for protection from the only male they trusted, Kgotso. They were not just visitors. They were refugees, and Kgotso, the old king, was their last hope against both the natural threat of rival males and the insidious human-made dangers. Dr. Imani recognized the gravity of Omnicorp's encroachment. Releasing Kgotso, a lion now accustomed to human presence, was a massive risk. But keeping him separated, knowing the true source of his pride's vulnerability, felt like an ethical violation of the highest order. Lions are intelligent social animals. They understand strength in numbers, she said, her eyes fixed on Kaelo. His presence might deter them and expose the truth about Omnicorp. For days, the team debated, the outpost a crucible of internal conflict. Releasing Kgotso was a colossal risk. For him, potentially habituating him further to humans and endangering him. For the team, jeopardizing their careers and the internationally recognized research project for the fragile ecosystem. Yet, keeping him captive, knowing the destruction Omnicorp wrought felt like complicity in the very cover-up they were now fighting. Then, on a moonless October night, the decision was taken from them. Kaelo, roused by an unusual silence, found Lerato, Kgotso's eldest daughter, outside her usual vigil point. She wasn't trying to escape. She had systematically dug beneath the fence, purposefully entering Kgotso's enclosure. Kaelo approached cautiously, his heart pounding. He found Lerato and Kgotso lying side by side in the faint starlight, her head resting against his massive mane, his powerful paw draped protectively over her flank. The scene was profound, raw, and undeniable, a powerful testament to their bond, their intelligence, and a desperate instinct for survival. Dr. Imani, called to witness the extraordinary tableau, finally spoke, her voice heavy with the weight of their impossible choice. "We have two options, Kaelo. Reinforce the enclosure, separate them, and continue the controlled study, and implicitly, the Omnicorp cover-up. Or we open the gate, let nature take its course, and let the world see what happens." The decision was no longer just about Kgotso. It was irrevocably linked to exposing the corporate conspiracy. We've witnessed an extraordinary bond forged in secrecy and the heartbreaking truth of human greed poisoning the wild. Now the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Kgotso and his family reclaim their home, or will the looming shadow of Omnicorp consume them? Like, share, and subscribe to follow this incredible journey, because what happens next could change everything for these lions and for conservation itself. For 48 grueling hours, The research team was torn, a chasm opening between scientific rigor and ethical imperative. Traditionalists argued fiercely for continued captivity, citing the immense value of controlled study, the fear of losing invaluable data, and the dangerous precedent of releasing a habituated wild animal. But Kaelo and Dr. Imani, now united, spearheaded a growing faction advocating for a supervised release. Their voices, fueled by outrage and conviction, pushed to expose the Omnicorp corruption. Dr. Imani, usually reserved, spoke with a burning passion that electrified the air. We're not just documenting social bonds anymore. We're witnessing active pride dynamics adapting to human-caused threats, to corporate greed. This isn't just a research anomaly. It could revolutionize lion conservation and expose what Omnicorp is doing to this entire ecosystem. Her words resonated, chipping away at the rigid scientific protocols. A tense compromise was finally reached. Kgotso would be collared with an advanced GPS tracker and released, but not alone. Lirado, his courageous daughter, would accompany him, her presence a crucial link to the wild. The team would follow at a safe distance, ready to intervene if immediate danger arose. Implicitly, their mission had expanded. They would now be documenting not just lion behavior, but the ecological impact of Omnicorp's predatory activities, gathering irrefutable evidence. But their efforts wouldn't be in isolation. Secretly alerted by Kaelo and Dr. Imani's carefully cultivated network, journalists from National Geographic and the BBC had arrived, their discreet presence a testament to the magnitude of the story. Kaelo knew that unprecedented wildlife behavior near a sensitive area, coupled with the subtle hints of a cover-up, would draw global attention. It was their insurance, their shield against the powerful forces they were challenging. The morning of the release was cool, the air crisp and clear. Kaelo moved with a practiced gentleness, securing the tracking collar around Kgotso's powerful neck. He felt the lion's deep understanding, a quiet acceptance of the device that would bind them even in freedom. Lirado, meanwhile, paced impatiently by the gate, her muscles coiled, her eyes fixed eastward. Just beyond the perimeter fence, Kganya and Chepo waited, silent sentinels, their tails flicking in anticipation. The air was thick with unspoken expectation, heavy with the gravity of the truth about to be unleashed. With a deep breath, Kaelo unlatched the heavy gate. It swung open, revealing the boundless Kalahari beyond. Kgotso stepped out, not with a rush of wild abandon, but with a deliberate, almost regal pause at the threshold, as if understanding the immense gravity of the moment. Then Lirado moved, leading the way with a powerful stride, and Kgotso followed, his massive frame now a majestic symbol of hope and defiance against an unseen enemy. The reunion was deeply moving. Kgotso met Kganya and Chepo, touching noses, rubbing flanks, a silent symphony of relief and renewed strength. Then, with Lirado once again taking the lead, the small group moved eastward, a determined procession towards their lost territory, and directly towards the new male coalition and the insidious blight of Omnicorp. Kaelo, Dr. Imani, and the journalists followed, their vehicles maintaining a respectful distance. Kaelo watched through binoculars as the females scouted ahead, their movements coordinated, frequently returning to Kgotso to confer, displaying an organized, intelligent behavior that underscored their desperation. By mid-afternoon, they neared the boundary of the contested territory. The females grew visibly more alert, their ears swiveling, their bodies tensed. Kaelo saw it then. Fresh, aggressive land clearing, the tracks of heavy machinery, and pools of shimmering chemical runoff matching his earlier discovery. This was it, the undeniable source of the conspiracy, laid bare for the world to see. Thabo, ever observant, murmured, "They're leading him to the pride. But the new males, and what else is out there?" Kaelo's heart pounded. He knew the real danger wasn't just the younger, stronger male lions who had usurped Kgotso's territory. It was the environmental degradation, the poisoned water, the disrupted food chain caused by Omnicorp that had weakened the pride, making them vulnerable to the takeover in the first place. A confrontation was on the horizon, inevitable and terrifying. Kaelo knew Kgotso, despite his recovery, was no match for younger males in direct, unbridled combat. But this wasn't just about a fight for dominance. It was about reclaiming a territory damaged by human hands and exposing the corporate negligence for the world to see. We've witnessed an extraordinary bond forged in secrecy and the heartbreaking truth of human greed poisoning the wild. Now, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Kgotso and his family reclaim their home, or will the looming shadow of Omnicorp consume them? Like, share, and subscribe to follow this incredible journey, because what happens next could change everything for these lions and for conservation itself. Cresting a low, dusty rise, the tracking team finally spotted them, the rest of the pride. 7 more females and 4 tiny cubs nestled precariously beneath the sparse shade of a cluster of acacia trees, clearly displaced from their prime hunting grounds. The reunion with Kgotso and his daughters was extraordinary, defying every conventional understanding of lions' social structures. Growls of recognition, nuzzles, and a flurry of curious cubs surrounding the old male. It was a scene of profound emotional depth captured by the hushed cameras of the journalists. Within the hour, the ominous prediction materialized. 2 magnificent young male lions, their dark manes a symbol of their dominance, appeared on a distant ridge. They spotted the reunited pride. Instantly, their relaxed posture shifted to one of aggressive alertness, muscles tensing, eyes fixed on their new rivals. Kgotso, sensing the impending confrontation, positioned himself centrally, a formidable presence despite his age. The females, with astonishing coordination, formed a defensive ring around him, swiftly shuttling the cubs to the rear, away from the immediate threat. It was an undeniable display of organized, intelligent, collective behavior that sent a jolt of awe through the observing team. As the young males advanced, confident in their strength, something unprecedented happened. Larato, Kgotso's fierce daughter, moved forward. She wasn't retreating or submitting. Instead, she led the other females in a coordinated advance, their powerful warning growls echoing across the landscape. This collective defiance was unheard of. Females do not normally challenge new male leadership in such a unified, aggressive manner. For several tense minutes, a standoff. The females held their ground, a unified barrier of muscle and will. The young males, clearly confused and unsettled by this unexpected show of force, hesitated. Their confidence wavered. Finally, the lead younger male turned, a low, frustrated growl escaping his throat, and retreated, his accomplice quickly following. It wasn't a full withdrawal from the territory, but a strategic retreat from this inexplicable confrontation. The research team, hidden and awestruck, could barely believe their eyes. This defied everything known about lion social structures. Females actively choosing to protect an elderly male over aligning with younger, stronger ones. It was a direct, undeniable consequence of Kgotso's unique bond with his daughters and the pride's resilience against the human-caused displacement and chemical poisoning that had enabled the younger male's initial takeover. Kaelo and Dr. Imani exchanged a look of grim triumph. Over the following weeks, a new dynamic emerged. The pride, rather than re-establishing a single cohesive unit, split into 2 cooperative groups, sharing a surprisingly large territory. The younger males, seemingly cowed by the females' unexpected alliance, occupied the western, degraded section, the area most impacted by Omnicorp's pollution. Kgotso and his daughters, along with the cubs, controlled the prime eastern section, their traditional hunting grounds. Kaelo realized that Kgotso's very survival, driven by human injustice, had forced an adaptation, revealing a new, more complex social intelligence in lions, a resilience shaped by the very threats designed to break them. 18 months later, the groundbreaking paper Adaptive Social Structures in African Lion Prides, Evidence of Elder Attention and Cooperative Defense in the Face of Environmental Exploitation, was published in the prestigious journal Nature. It detailed not only the lion's extraordinary behavior, the unprecedented female alliances, and Kgotso's unique role, but also included the irrefutable evidence of Omnicorp's industrial encroachment and its devastating ecological impact. The meticulously documented biomarkers, soil samples, and drone footage forced a wider international investigation. The conspiracy unraveled. The initial unusual reports, previously suppressed by the Conservation Board, were now public. Omnicorp faced massive investigations, crippling fines, and multiple legal actions, their stock plummeting. The Northern Botswana Wildlife Conservation Center underwent a painful but necessary reform, forcing accountability and transparency. Kaelo's defiant act hadn't just saved a lion, it had uncovered a systemic problem. exposing the insidious links between corporate power and environmental destruction and forcing powerful entities to answer. 3 years later, Kgotso died peacefully at the remarkable age of 18, surrounded by his daughters and the thriving pride he had helped preserve. His extraordinary story, painstakingly documented by Kaelo and Dr. Imani, became the Kgotso Protocol, influencing conservation globally, emphasizing individual animal care, and fiercely addressing human-caused environmental threats. Kaelo often visited Kgotso's resting place, a quiet spot overlooking the reclaimed eastern plains. He reflected on how saving one life, defying a system corrupted by hidden interests, had revealed a profound adaptive intelligence in nature and forced a fundamental reevaluation of conservation ethics. Kgotso wasn't just a lion, he was a teacher, whose life became a testament to connection, adaptation, and grace, even in the brutal, encroaching shadow of corporate greed. The vast, parched expanse of the Kalahari had once seemed an endless landscape of natural challenges, where conservationists like Kaelo wrestled daily with the raw, brutal beauty of survival. But the journey that began with the desperate plea of an injured lion, Kgotso, pushed Kaelo beyond the familiar into a labyrinth of human deceit and corporate malevolence. His initial decision to defy orders to save a creature deemed too old and too unusual to warrant resources wasn't merely an act of compassion, it was the first tremor in an earthquake of truth. What unfolded was a testament to nature's profound intelligence and humanity's capacity for both cruelty and courage. Kgotso, scarred by chemical burns from Omnicorp's reckless expansion, became more than just a patient. He became a teacher whose extraordinary bond with Kaelo and his pride's unprecedented defiance shattered scientific dogma and exposed a chilling conspiracy. Kaelo's actions, initially risking his career, ultimately brought down a corrupt corporation and reshaped the very ethics of conservation. Kgotso's legacy, immortalized in the Kgotso Protocol, ensures that every life, every whisper of distress in the wild is heard and defended, reminding us that sometimes saving one life can indeed change the world.